Okay, so good morning. And welcome to session C4, which is the update on CSTP workgroup revisions and timeline. I am Christina Najarro. I'm a consultant with the Professional Services Division at the CTC, and I have a few reminders before we begin. First of all, the session is being recorded, and all of the slides for the session, if you would like to follow along, can be found in the link to the presenter notes that is on the conference agenda. After I introduce our presenters, I will be monitoring the chat for any questions that you have for them, and we are going to save questions for the end of the session today. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and introduce Karen Sacramento, who has worked at the CTC in the Professional Services Division since 2001 as an education consultant in teacher preparation, program evaluation, and research, with a focus on teacher induction program policy and standards. Prior to joining the commission, Karen was a teacher, a counselor, administrator, and an intern program manager in the Bay Area. We all know Karen very well in this induction world. Next is Dr. Kara Mendoza, an administrator with the CTC in the Professional Services Division. She just celebrated her 2-year anniversary last month. Kara's career has included many opportunities to grow as a middle and high school English teacher, elementary principal, and as the co-director of the California Writing Project at UC Berkeley, as well as the director of Induction for 10 years. Of note, Kara served on the CSTP Refresh Workgroup in 2009. And we also have Manjeet Singh, who works at Fresno County Superintendent of Schools as the director of teacher induction. Manjeet has worked there for 10 years now. Prior to her role in induction, she was a middle school teacher and then a middle school administrator. Manjeet was intrigued by the work of refreshing the CSTPs because they have been used throughout her professional journey thus far, from teacher, administrator, and now in induction. Manjeet is also a mom to 3 active boys. And last is Nair De Silva, a proud Bay Area native. I'm right there with you, and has spent most of her teaching and instructional coaching in Oakland. She is currently the program coordinator for the Contra Costa County Office of Education Teacher Induction Program, and is the dog mama of 2 amazing pity mixes. Is that what that says? Sorry if I got that wrong, Nair. Welcome to our presenters and to everybody joining us today.
Well, good morning as well, and also welcome to our session. We have a big group here today, a lot of interest in this this work that's been unfolding last few months. So again, this is the update on the California Standards for the Teaching Profession Refresh session. Here are the highlights of the CSTP workgroup work status on this refresh of the CSTP. And we know that this work and the CSTP are central to the induction standards, the induction work that's done in the ILP. So as Christine introduced, I'm Karen Sacramento from the CTC, and I'm really glad to be joined by my fellow CTC staff member, Kara Mendoza, who does co-facilitate the CSTP workgroup with me, and others who we will highlight. And we also really have the great pleasure of working with and being joined by 2 workgroup members and induction leader experts, Nair and Manjeet. So again, our warmest welcomes to you in this session this morning. And Kara, I think that's your slide.
Is it, Karen? Thank you. So again, we welcome you all to the induction as a whole, and of course our little talk today about the CSTP refresh. We are blessed to have a village basically gathering together to attend STP, very mindful individuals bringing together throughout the year in deep thought. And we are very fortunate to be able to have folks join us beyond the induction, beyond our IHEs, and beyond the CTC. And with that said, we have partners in the California Department of Education who have joined us on this journey, Tara Bennett Brown and Kristen Cruz, Allen, and they are instrumental in supporting us and supporting this work. And it's a joint effort. And then in addition to our friends at the California Department of Education, we have colleagues from the Region 15 Comprehensive Center through West Ed, Heather Matson and Libby Rogier, and they've been instrumental in supporting this work as well. And then beyond the leadership, we have these, and I've called them this at a commission meeting, we have rock stars amongst us in the refresh group from various IHGs, LEAs, and other organizations here in the state of California, and especially representatives from various education organizations such as CTA and our School Boards Association and private colleges. It's just a lovely conglomerate of individuals who are, for the sake of education here in California, really examining the CSTP and how we can refresh them and grow them from the 2009 time we were together.
Thank you. As Kara said, it's a vital and robust group of folks and inspirational to be with at every meeting. The members of the work group have a specific charge as they go through the work. It's a direct and an important charge for their purpose and for the intention of the refresh for the CSTP. And that is to make expert recommendations to the CTC for this purpose, updating and refreshing the California standards for the teaching profession. Once completed, these work group revisions will go forward as a recommendation to the Commission on Teacher Credentialing for approval. And this will be in the form of an action item at a commission meeting. We anticipate it being, we don't have a month yet that it will go forward, but we anticipate sometime between early to mid 2021 to be approved. The next slide outlines the objective. And within the objective for this session, there are a few thoughts, a few notes to point out. One, that the CSTP are over 10 years old that we are currently operating under. And for validity and relevance, it's important to update them at this time. This is why this work is occurring. During the session, we will speak to much that has changed in the world and in education in the last 10 years, and the need to create changes in the California standards for the teaching profession to be both responsive to these changes and aspirational around the climates today. This update is not an overhaul. We're going to speak a bit to that, but it's rather a refresh to bring the domains current and California in the articulated way that it has been designed to do so. And we'll also review the timeline with you for this work as we look ahead into 2021 and kind of the rollout for the new CSTP.
So thank you, Karen. One of the things you will notice when the draft CSTPs are disseminated for input from the field is that we have really made a commitment to the concept of refresh, as Karen has pointed out. What will not change are the actual domains of the 6 CSTP. And it's just really important for our work as a learning and teaching continuum because the TPEs have now caught up to the CSTP. So the 6 domains are remaining. There might be a little bit of a wordsmithing on one of them or 2 of them, but the general domains of the CSTP, as you see before you, will remain as they are. And we really wanted to make sure folks understand that. There's no baby being thrown out with any bathwater, and we are making those connections to the teacher preparation programs and through the TPE. So we're kind of excited about that. Did you want to add anything, Karen? Who's back there? All right. Okay. This is our friend Nair, yes? All
yes,
right.
so welcome again, everyone. So I am a part of the work group. My name is Nair De Silva, and the work group actually started in June. And in June, we were introduced to the framework by which we would be doing the work and also the focus of the work. And one of the messages that our facilitators, Karen and Kara and other wonderful people that have stepped in, communicated to us is that we actually are operating from really solid, strong roots and a foundation, as Kara mentioned. So the CSTP standard 6 domains are the framework by which we are working, and that's guiding our work. And the focus for our work as a work group is really to ground ourselves in this strong foundation and think about refreshing the language, descriptors, the expectations, and the indicators so that it's more reflective of our current socio-political context and the shifts in California as a whole. Slide. So as we came together as a work group and started to talk with another work group and what we were most passionate about in terms of the CSTP, some themes and priorities started to emerge. In particular, equity, access, and inclusion seemed to be at the forefront of all of the different conversations that were being had in the work group. And to build off that, we also discussed a lot about culturally responsive and sustaining practices and how do we infuse some of this in the CSTPs and our language so that it's more and explicit. Another component that stood out in terms of a theme was family and guardian engagement. Tap. Social and emotional learning, the importance of developing emotional intelligence was another component that really stood out to the work group as we started to have these really robust conversations. And that connected to teachers as well as learners and the importance of making the profession sustainable and how is it that we are working together as colleagues to build the conditions for learning, not only for our students, but also for our colleagues so that we stay and we grow and we develop alongside one another. Tap. As no surprise to any of you, what was lifted up and highlighted the need to really call out explicitly, linguistically, the need to integrate technology. And we are all in the midst of this grand learning experiment, distance learning instruction. And we talked about ways to really call out the importance of integrating technology and for our educators to really become fluent with new technologies and lean into that growth mindset so that we can continue to develop really robust and meaningful learning environments, even in the digital realm. Tap. And the really being that the CSTPs serve for the of development from new teachers all the way to veteran teachers, but also they often guide professional learning and even evaluations. So knowing that the CSTPs have a broad range of applications. Slide. So a big part of the work group's work is think about alignment and coherence. When the California Teaching Performance Expectations, TPEs, which guide teacher preparation and program development, were refreshed, they've done so directly and purposely in relationship to the CSTP. So now that we are on the CSTP refresh work group, we are also looking at a continuum of development from pre-service. So one of our first tasks was actually to engage in crosswalk between the California Teaching Performance Expectations and the CSTPs and thinking about, what is some of the powerful language and ideas that we can draw from in that most recent refresh and translate that into the California standards for the teaching profession. We also had the opportunity to spend a little bit of time looking at the capsules, which is meant for administrators and others in leadership roles in California, and thinking about how the refinement of those standards, how they were organized and structured, can also inform the refresh of the CSTP. Slide. We had the opportunity to really dive into some research.
All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Manjeet Singh. I'm from Fresno County Superintendent of Schools, and I'm also part of this work group. And so as Nair was mentioning that we had the opportunity to dive into some research, we were very fortunate as a work group because the facilitators of this group, such as Karen and Kara, they had done much of the legwork already in regards to compiling a variety of resources for the work group to just jump into and start digging through and deciding what do we want to pull from these. And so the first thing that we looked at was state standards from different states. And so we looked at the standards from Illinois, Ohio, New York, Texas, and Massachusetts. And these weren't pulled randomly. They were pulled because either they most recently had a refresh themselves in their standards, their demographics in regards to student population mirrored California's, and also Nair mentioned various lenses that we have for the CSTPs. These states also use their teaching standards for a variety of purposes. So evaluation, new teacher support, things like that. And then we also looked at Charlotte Danielson's framework for teaching and her 4 domains, and we were able to pull some quality language from those as well. So those are just a variety of the resources we used. As we were digging through these research resources, we were really looking for language, themes associated to English learners, students with disabilities, cultural responsiveness, social emotional learning, and parent engagement. Really wanting to beef up parent engagement in our standards. I'm going to say tap play here, Kara. Thank you. So then after we met in June, we met again in September. And in that work group for those 2 days, we were essentially divided into smaller work groups, kind of like breakout groups. And we stayed with those groups. We've stayed with that group consistently throughout our work. And so in September, we were assigned one CSTP as a group to really dig into, do a deep dive. And so in that work group, we would kind of separate and have our independent time and read the CSTP we were assigned to read and decide, and looking at that language, kind of make a wish list. What do we want to keep? What do we want to reword? And what do we want to possibly remove? So we would work on our own and come back in our small work group and share out. And what we found is most often, all of us would have very similar ideas of what we want to keep and what we want to reword and what we want to possibly remove. And so it would be amazing to see one sentence that one team member posed, and the way through conversation we were able to reword it and craft it into a much more powerful statement. That's really been rewarding. So we would do that and then work on that for 2 days. And at the end of the session, we would do a gallery walk and kind of share out whole group with the entire work group, what we worked on our CSTP, how we reworded some of the language, what we want to take out, what we want to keep. So it would lead from there, but then again, our facilitators, they would do a lot of hard work on the back end, and they would continue to refine these statements that we had come up with, so that when we met back up, we were working with an even more powerful document than what we left off with. Tap, Kara. Thank you. And then most recently we met in November. So the structure of this session, thank you. Thanks, Kara. So most recently we met in November. And the structure of this session was very similar to September. The only difference is we had a presenter here. We had the Bilingual Authorization Work Group, a very, very knowledgeable group of people in regards to bilingual education. And they left us with some resources to review, standards that we could possibly infuse into our standard, our assigned standard, if we thought it could mesh beautifully. And so that was a great resource we got to use in November. So we continued in our work groups. And then one of the things that we did in the session is we dug deeper into the structure. And so Nair had mentioned the indicators, the descriptions, and the expectations. And so we dug deep into that language, reworded it, recrafted it, and that's where we left off with our work. We're meeting again this week to continue on.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Manjeet. I was just typing to everyone that there seems to be a little larger issue than we thought before with the PowerPoint that was posted in the Google. So I promise we will get it in there as soon as possible. I'm not the best at multitasking. Alrighty, so just to let you all know, we do have a timeline for continuing this work, as Karen brought up earlier. So as Manjeet said, the group is meeting on later this week to go ahead and really do some final wordsmithing and some final looks at the CSTP and review the input that we got an opportunity to do. In January of 2021, if all goes as planned, we will open the public comment period. And this will be through a shared survey that is sent to the field. As all of us in the PSD do, we rely heavily on the PSD e-news to advertise or alert our friends in the field about events. And so sometime in January, most likely around in the first weeks of January, you will see a link to the refreshed CSTP, and we welcome your comments. There are some things where we really want everyone in the field as much information as they can and give input. It's really important to this work. February 2021 is our assigned last meeting for the group, and at that time we will review all the input from the field. And then spring or early summer, Karen and I will bring forth the recommendations from the refresh group to the Commission on Teacher Credentialing for action. And after that, it's a wild ride, right? So, yeah.
And I would just like to echo, Kara, that public comment period, again, it is very important, and we're very hopeful that we get your feedback on the draft CSTP, because then that February meeting is when the work group considers and incorporates and creates the final document that will be brought forward to the commission. So that will be a survey monkey and open for probably a few weeks to a month, and we really do encourage you and your your professional shared through your professional organizations, your clusters to participate. We would love directors and mentors and coordinators and faculty, lots of different stakeholders to participate in looking at this work. So
with that, we have done our due diligence and left time open for Q&A and I don't know if Christina, if there's anything in the chat that has bubbled to the surface beyond, we want the PowerPoint.
Yes, yeah. Forgive me, everybody, if I missed a comment. I'm just trying to scroll through madly to see if there's anything other than missing the PowerPoint. I do see a question from Beth saying most practicing teachers don't subscribe to PSD e-news. Is there another way to reach out to them in general?
That's a good question, Beth. What we hope is that when that link is shared through the PSD e-news, it is then shared with others. So internally within districts, if there's, internal listservs of all teachers, of, induction, those affiliated with induction programs. Our main vehicle for sharing with the field is through the PSD e-news. We don't have a separate listserv of teachers in their emails, but we sure hope that it's shared and shared. So I think that's the best way to think about that. And as you, with again, your professional listservs, if you could be thinking ahead to how will I get these out to the people I think should have it.
And I thank you for that, Beth, because we could even put that in the actual announcement that, feel free to share this link with friends in the field and anyone else you think, could give some feedback. Thank you. We appreciate that.
I have a question. Can you hear me? Oh.
Now we can't hear you, Janine.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I have a question about the technology component. When you were doing your research, Now, you know, we're all adapting to that right now. We're not allowed to go out to the sites. We have to do everything online with our teachers. I'm a coach. And did you find when you were revamping this with the technology component that there were some specific guidelines that are standardized for observing, say, lessons, or what kind of glitches did you come upon for that?
Nair or Manjit, do you want to take that, or do you want one of us?
You could take it, that'd be great, Karen.
Okay, I'll jump in and then Kara if you want to. So I think overall the answer would be that there is a greatly increased awareness and application of how technology needs to be used. And so apart from specifics around how you do that, it's more of a integrated theme throughout that this is now you know, we've really ramped up in making it integral to how we teach. So that being said, it is woven into across the CSTP, across the domains of the CSTP to support and facilitate those settings, however they may look now, however they may look going forward. So I think that's the best answer at this time. Kara, did you have anything to add?
I'll just add, and I thought I heard from Janine's question, and maybe I was wrong, about using technology with doing observations. Okay. The new teachers need to show their growth as an educator. And we didn't talk at all about the coach and mentee relationship, the coach-coachee relationship. This is really about how the teachers show their ability to grow as a teacher. So the technology we talked about is relative to any sorts of virtual lessons that they created or that kind of thing. And we're touching on the technology certainly, but we didn't go, into the
Right. Yeah, it does. Thank you. In other words, technologically or meeting those standards is good enough as long as they meet the standard and they can show technologically how that's being done.
Yeah, I think yes, to show their growth. Sure.
Right.
Thank you.
So I think we have a number of questions about timeline. Christina, have you had a chance to look at those in the chat? Is there kind of themes around?
Yes. I'm just going to ask this one question first, and then I'm going to continue going through themes. So it sounded like somebody heard that there was one CSTP into which you dove a little bit more deeply. They may have missed hearing exactly which one that was, and can you share any highlights?
I'm not sure that there was. I wouldn't say there's one that was dove into more deeply. The CSTPs have been looked across all the 6 domains. And as Manjit Nair said, dedicated work groups have really been looking at those through different lenses and across all the research and input documents. So I'm not sure if there's more to that question, but I would say that they have been looked at thoroughly across.
I think, Karen, that maybe goes to my slide.
Okay.
Each work group was assigned one CSTP, but every single CSTP was allocated to different work groups. So they were all looked at evenly and dissected equally.
It was one of the ways that we could really develop depth as opposed to just breadth. So each group got to specialize and dive really deeply into like conceptually and the linguistic components of one standard. And there were also opportunities to share amongst the different groups. Again, with thinking about alignment of language and coherence and where there might be overlap. So that was really, I think, what Manjit was referring to in terms of the one standard and the deep dive.
Okay, there's also a couple questions about, just to clarify, when we're targeting these CSTPs to be rolled out. Are we saying that it's for the 2021 school year? And then there's also a couple questions about sneak peeks into some of the language.
I'll go ahead and jump in, and then Kara, if others do. So yes, that is what we anticipate, that this will be approved before the 21-22 school year in 4. Obviously, there are other considerations around that, and how that will be used within teacher induction programs in terms of also developing a continuum to support that. That shows different levels of practice and evidence of practice. So we still have things on the burner to consider, but once approved, we will then move into supporting in teacher induction programs in using that. So I think it's realistic to say for next school year.
We have a couple questions around the theme of how much of a refresh is going to be anticipated. If people are working on a district evaluation revision, when are districts supposed to be adopting these CSTPs versus when induction programs are supposed to be, just kind of that bigger impact question when we do adopt the new ones.
Yeah. All right, so I'll jump in with that too. Again, if anyone else, Kara, Nair, Menji.
You're doing great, Karen. Thank you.
So that's a great question, because it really speaks to what the commission work has purview over. The commission oversees the teacher induction standards, which use the CSTP to measure progress towards mastery and growth. How they are used in districts for evaluation is an employment purview and separate from the work of the commission. So once these are adopted by the commission, they are then there for districts and county offices and others to consider for other use. But we don't have a timeline for that work, because that's not work that's under the umbrella of our responsibility and our oversight. So hopefully that answered that. I don't know if anyone else wants to jump in or if there's a follow-up question around it.
Okay, Kara, I saw you unmute, so I thought you were going to say something. Okay, okay. There's another question about, are there any standards being addressed specifically for special education teachers, like case management, initial and triennial assessments, for example?
Those populations aren't pulled out in the new standards, just as they are in the newly worked on standards, just like they're not pulled out in the current standards. But certainly, we see them permeated throughout our current standards. We see addressing the needs of English learners and students with special needs, the equitable access to content and learning environment and instructional practices. In assessing the learning needs and meeting the learning needs of all students, it means all students. And that is something the work group 2 has really grappled with. So, what does that mean? All students, what does each? So I would say those groups will be focused on in the CSTP, and in some areas, I think the language will mirror current language that does specify them, but the expectation is that teaching and learning will encompass all the different types of students that a teacher would have in their classroom. Teacher speaks to in working with both gen ed credential candidates and ed specialist credential candidates.
And I'll just add to this one, because I thought I heard like the triennial IEP and different points of the IEPs. And certainly standard 6, when there's discussion in the standard around responding to compliance issues and or ed code regulations, and being that responsible professional educator in the compliance world of education, I think things like that will be potentially addressed. But with Karen, as Karen said, it's a holistic approach.
And I'll just close that, I think, by saying that the CSTP within induction cannot be looked at separately from the induction standards. And the teacher induction standards purposefully includes language around and for those candidates who have an ed specialist preliminary credential that they're working to clear. So language around case management, language around collaboration and co-teaching, and we would expect that the CSTP fit into that candidate's setting and need, and the language within the CSTP will support what that candidate most needs to do in their setting.
And the last, I think there's 3 questions on this, is regarding the continuum of practice and when that will be updated. Will it also roll out in the 2021 school year?
That's a good question, and we were ready for it, and I can. It's our plan. That's. This is not work that can happen at the same time. That be both developed and refreshed and adopted by the commission, and then that work would need to roll out. But it is our hope that would roll out. I guess on record I would say over the summer. That would be our hope, that there would be work around that, and then a continuum to support it would be ready for the fall, because obviously they go together, and we realize that for programs to be able to utilize them in the fall, they would need descriptors to be able to look at those standards under.
So a follow-up question to that, and I think this may be one of our last questions, is will there be any examples available that will delineate how teachers are meeting the different levels of the continuum of practice?
So I'm not sure I understand the question besides the continuum itself. The continuum, as well as the CSTP, does show what practice looks like. So those would be descriptors of evidence of practice and the levels of growth. So I see a question: examples of evidence of growth. I'm not sure I exactly understand that either. I think the evidence will be around what those levels look like at the element level. So what, and then as one moves one to the next, it would in and of itself show the process of growth. So I may be missing something here with that question.
Do we want, Karen, do we want Nancy or one of the others who asked that question to unmute themselves and join the conversation?
Yep.
Get clarity?
I'd be glad to do that.
Well, I was trying to clarify that what the previous person had asked, that perhaps it was having examples that show, because we're always, as mentors, we're trying to help our teachers understand what is evidence of growth, and sometimes the descriptors are a little abstract, and so I don't know if that's what her intention was, but I know I have that interest.
When we look at the whole CSTP, we do have those descriptors in them. As teachers develop, they may ask, how do I look like, why do I? And CSTP are being looked at the descriptor level to be as, Nair said it well, but just, to have as clear language around what does that look like in practice, so that those can actually be descriptors, be examples of practice. So it's being looked at the domain level, the element level, and the descriptor level. And those are, there's a very intentional effort to make them as actionable and practical in terms of new teacher practice as possible. The work group is that it's a work group of practitioners who do the work connected to the CSTP and work with those who do, work with mentors and others. So that too is being looked at.
I'm sorry, we're at 11:50, and there is one question. I don't know. It sounds like it looks like it'll be pretty quick to answer, Karen. Is it a possibility that there will be a transition year to work on transitioning to these standards, or is 2021 it, and then that's done? And then once we answer that question, we don't want to be the barrier that's going to keep you guys from lunch. We know that's an important date. So,
yeah, I think as with any rollout for standards, the intention is to be as supportive to programs as we can. We have gotten a ton of feedback that the CSTP has needed refreshing for a number of years, and they're just not as useful to programs as they could be. And so once the new revised CSTP are approved, we need to look at, what's going to be supportive to these out. Certainly, we don't want to do anything drastic and have there be concern in terms of accreditation and in terms of how to support candidates. So we are very open to typically during a transition to commission standards, we would have a transition. But again, we need to see what's best going to support programs and really get the pulse of that. I think, even having a survey around that will be really important so that we understand the best way to provide technical assistance to programs as these new CSTP are being implemented and to support using them.
All right, and just to build off what you said, Karen, the standards essentially, like the foundation on which the standards are built, essentially stay the same. And so we're not talking about a complete overhaul. We're talking about refreshing some of the language so it's more responsive to our current context. So essentially the standards are the same and we are refining them. We are refining some of the language around that. So.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you everybody for attending this session and for attending the conference today. If you do have some more questions, we do have a question and answer session in the last breakout of the day. I believe it's E4. If you do have additional questions that you can think of that you would like to ask commission staff. So we thank you again, and the next session starts at, I believe, 12:50. So go enjoy your lunch and we'll see you back then.
And I'll be adding the link to the PowerPoint for you all as soon as we're done here. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.